We see that, along with a sharp drop in coal production, its export was further reduced. Coal mining in 1920 amounted to 15.6% of production in 1916, and export, 12%. The party and the Soviet government took heroic measures to support the work of transport. Improving the work of transport in the period of maximum tension of the Soviet Republic was a matter of life and death of the Soviet government. The Glavpolitbud was created as a temporary organ of the Communist Party and the Soviet government to help the trade union and party organizations of transport. The capture by the White Guards of the Donets Basin in 1918 and 1919 set the task before the Soviet Republic of increasing the extraction of coal in the Moscow region. Thanks to the special concerns of the party and government in 1920, the Podmoskovny Basin increased coal production to 40 million puds against 23.4 million puds in 1918 and 24.2 million puds in 1919. In the Kuznetsk Basin, coal mining fell 1918 to 56.6 million puds against 75.9 million puds in 1917. Up until 1921, this figure of coal production in the Kuzbass was almost stable. Coal production in the Cheremkovo district also fell from 76 million puds in 1917 to 29.8 million puds in 1920. In Turkestan in 1920, 9.7 million puds of coal were produced, against 11.3 million puds in 1917. Statistical Yearbook of 1918, 1920, Volume 2, p. 219. All this forced the Soviet government to take the most energetic measures to use other types of fuel: firewood, peat, oil shale. For 3 years peat extraction in the Soviet Republic has been steadily increasing. By the years it was 1918, 57.7 million puds, 1919, 67 million, in 1920, 92.8 million, in 1921, 139.2 million puds. IBID, p. 222. At the initiative of Lenin, the famous inventor of the hydrotorment engineer R.E. Klassen in the Civil War for the first time could apply his method on a large scale. Taking into account the advantages of the Hydrotorf, based on the complete mechanization of production and, therefore, liberating thousands of workers from hard work, Lenin repeatedly pointed out that special care must be taken to monitor Hydrotorf. Lenin, SOCH, Volume XXIX, p. 401. Reports Glavtorf. Lenin carefully studied and personally gave instructions. During the Civil War, peat industry was the only industry that grew from year to year. An exceptionally large role fell on the share of wood fuel in the fuel balance of the Soviet Republic. During the Civil War, the oil industry underwent almost the same fate as the coal industry of the Donetsk Basin. Hostility of the capitalists, British occupiers, bourgeois nationalists, etc., in the Baku oil region led to a sharp decline in oil production in 1918-1920. In 1916, oil production in all regions amounted to 602.1 million puds. In 1918, 232.9 million. In 1919, 269.2 million, and in 1920, 233.8 million puds. In the Baku region, oil production declined from 479.9 million puds in 1916 to 175.7 million puds in 1920. Statistical Yearbook of 1918, 1920, Volume 2, p. 223. The struggle for fuel was in the true sense of the word a continuation of the front of the Civil War. By the decision of the Council of the Workers and Peasants' Defense of October 29, 1919, the transport of firewood and other types of fuel was equated with military operational assignments. In November 1919, the decree of the Council of Workers and Peasants' Defense introduced a natural labor and cartage service. In early 1919, The Red Army was involved in the procurement of fuel. The main tasks of the Red Army units, temporarily transferred to the position of the labor armies in 1920, were logging and removal of firewood. Railroads were involved in the preparation of firewood. Special committees were set up, the Iron Committees, which were then taken over by the Glavskom. Lenin fought personally for fuel. He gave specific instructions, demanded from day-to-day reports, certificates. He went into all the details of the question, assisted the lagging sections, observed the right supply of workers employed in the fuel industry, followed the transport of fuel, personally gave instructions on saving oil, electricity, etc. At the beginning of 1918 there was a significant number of unemployed in the Soviet Republic. The sabotage of entrepreneurs and bourgeois cooperators led to overstocking in certain industries and stopping the factories, for example, the Simbirsk cloth factories. Entrepreneurs, then not yet nationalized factories and factories, trying to get rid of the workers' control hated for them, deliberately reduced production at the enterprises. The nationalization of large-scale industry and its transfer to the hands of the Soviet Republic, even in the midst of incredible devastation and civil war, returned many workers to production. There was no unemployment in the country. The factories that worked on orders for the Red Army complained about the shortage of workers and explained the lack of fulfillment of production plans. A significant part of the workers was mobilized in the Red Army. The cadre proletarians, especially the metal workers, were volunteers and remained in the ranks of the Red Army until the end of the Civil War. The most conscientious and devoted workers of those who remained in production worked with dedication, with enthusiasm. But the remaining personnel at the enterprises were not stable. During the Civil War, a large turnover of labor was observed. Thus, from October 1918 to July 1919, 8,260 people entered the Sormovo plant, and 10,404 retired during that time. Almost the same size reached turnover in other plants. Especially menacing flight reached the winter months. The report of the General Board of the State Association of Machine Building Plants, GOMZY, says, the main reason for the turnover of workers was the food crisis and, in part, the housing crisis. The measures taken to combat fluidity yielded insignificant results, since it was impossible to eliminate the main reason, the food crisis. As a result of the fluidity at the factories, only a quarter of the old skilled workers remained. Spraying of the basic forces of the proletariat, food difficulties and the reduction of labor discipline led to an increase in absenteeism for work on the largest plants.